Thursday night football, we got the Tampa Bay Bucs and the Buffalo Bills. Welcome, guys. My name is DK. We're going to break down the Showdown slate on Draftkings in this video. If you guys are a first-time viewer, I cover content for NFL, NBA, DFS, as well as for player prop sites like PrizePicks, Underdog, Parlay Play. If you guys are not on Parlay Play, you can use the link down below for a $100 deposit match bonus, or you can use the code DKDFS. But it's a prop site. They have basically every sport you can think of, and you can win up to 75x your money. I always say in these videos, best advice is to get on as many of these sites as possible, and then you search for the value. So again, if you guys are interested, check out that link down below. And if you're looking for more content for DFS or for prop stuff, you can check out my Patreon linked in the description. Okay, so before we get into the breakdown, let's kind of recap last Showdown slate. So there's a few things I want to talk about, and let's first go to Twitter. So in these videos, I really want anyone that watches to become a better DFS player, right? I'm not just, in these videos, I'm not just giving you picks. I'm like, oh, play this guy, don't play this guy. Because that's not what DFS is, right? It's way, way more complex than that. So I've said this a few times in my videos. If you really want to become a better DFS player, go look at what the best players are doing every single night. Go study that. And there's a site, Fantasy Labs Contest Dashboard. You can go back and look, and you can search to see what these 150 maxers are doing, how they're playing it. Now, people like laugh at me at this, but I literally, for years, every single day, I would go back and look to see what the best players in the world did. I wanted to see how they played, and that really improved my game. So let's kind of talk some things through really quick about the Monday Night Football Showdown slate, and then we'll get into the breakdown. So some interesting nuggets. Let's see. Again, the field was very, very heavy. The more casual players were heavy on the 49ers and the captain. Let's see. There's a lot of dupes, and this was the most important part. Now, I said in Patreon that I wanted to be heavy on tournaments on the Vikings main guys and the captains, specifically Hawkinson and Addison. Let's see, right? The sharper player strategy was extremely clear tonight. They were well under the field on the 49ers captains and well over the field on the Vikings, especially Hawkinson, Addison, Madison, and Osborne. Here's another interesting note here. 50% of entries left less than $400 on the table, which means basically half the field is not playing these large field tournaments right? Which we know there's a lot of casual players that they don't care. They're going to use all their salary, and they're just going to throw the lineup in the tournament, right? So, my thoughts were, and again, this happens a lot in these games where there's one team that's pretty heavily favored. The more casual player will always go heavy on the team that's favored, or just jam in those guys that are on the team that's favored. And it's a similar showdown was when the Jets and the Chiefs, right? Everyone just loaded up on the Chiefs. I said, don't play Chiefs defense. I want to go heavy on the Jets. Worked out in a huge way, and you saw a lot of the sharp players win the big contest. So my advice to you is go back and look and see what the best players in the world are doing every single night, right? So let's just go a couple examples. Mark Levin, right? Very sharp player. What did he do? Oh, let's see. He went heavy on the Vikings. TJ Hawkinson, the field played him at 32%. He had 82% Hawkinson. Jordan Addison, the field had 32%. He had 77%. The field had 6% Captain Addison. He had 22% Captain Addison. The field had 6% Captain Hawkinson. He had 18% Captain Hawkinson, right? So, and you can go look any of these sharp players. Go scroll through. Oxenduck, another super sharp player. What did he do? Alexander Madison. The field played him at 30%. He had 60%. The field played the Vikings D at 9%. He had 38% Vikings D. The field had 4% Captain Madison. He had 24% Captain Madison. The field had 25% Powell. He had 44% Powell, right? So all these 150 maxers, almost all of them, were way heavier on the Vikings, and they went heavier on the Vikings main guys and the captain. So again, I'm not lying to you when I talk about what the sharp players do. You have to do that if you want to be a better player. So just wanted to mention that. We can go over my lineup. Again, I went heavy on the Vikings. So let's go over this one. I believe was a 5-1. I had a 5-1 Viking stack and a 3-3 Viking stack. I only played low stakes, so I didn't have a huge like win, but we'll go over both my lineups and kind of talk things through. This is my 5-1 Viking stack. I played Hawkinson captain with Addison, with Kirk Cousins, with Alexander Madison, who was open in the end zone and ran a little bit too far, Brandon Powell, and the one bring back I used was George Kittle. And just look at the ownership, right? All these main Vikings were super low owned. I've talked about it. The Vikings just had a very condensed target share, right? They don't rotate guys. So that was the positive about the Vikings, and that worked out in a big way. Again, my other lineup, I had a 3-3. I had McCaffrey in that one. That one snuck it in the cash. Wasn't as good because I believe I didn't have Addison in that one. Let's see. Where's the other low stakes? This was my other lineup. Yeah, Hawkinson captain in both. I had CMC in this one, Kirk Cousins, Kittle, Powell, McLeod. Again, I did not have Addison in this one, but I still snuck into the cash because I was heavier on the Vikings. Even 3-3 was much heavier than the field, right? Most of the field was going 5-1 or 4-2. I went 3-3 Vikings in this one. I went 5-1 Vikings in my other lineup. So, again, want to become a better DFS player, see what the best players in the world are doing every single night. All right, let's take a look at the odds for this game. So we got the Bucs and the Bills. About 8.5 point spread. The Bills are favored by, and the total points are, I think it's like a 42 over under. I want to say. And someone also asked me on Twitter. It's like, hey, so when there's a slate like this, do you just go heavy on the underdog? And I said it depends on the slate. But I said these sharper players play more contrarian. Right, so it depends on the slate. I wouldn't say like every single slate there's an underdog and just jam them in, right? No, not every single slate. But yeah, 42.5 over under. It depends on the slate, but I will say, like I said, the really good GPP players, they play more contrarian than the field. And that's why when you see like questionable chalk go off, you see a lot of sharp players tilt on Twitter, right? So again, just general lesson there. Highly recommend that if you want to be a better DFS player. Okay, so Tampa Bay, Buffalo. We'll start it off with the Tampa Bay side. And at the top, first let's talk about the injuries. Baker and Godwin, both limited. I fully expect them both to play. So you got Mike Evans at 10K, Chris Godwin at 7.8 as the top two wide receivers. Both are going to play a majority of the game. Last week, Godwin played 51 snaps. Mike Evans played 57 snaps. They both ran 42 routes. I think Mike Evans has a bit of a higher ceiling than Chris Godwin. But I would say Godwin has a little bit of a higher floor than Mike Evans. So I think both receivers are firmly in play. Again, I like the ceiling more with Evans. I like the floor more with Godwin. Baker Mayfield, 9.2K. I mean, I think he's viable. I don't think a lot of people are going to click him because we know. Okay, well, again, let's look at the total, look at the spread. I already know what the field's going to do. They're going heavy on Buffalo. They're going to play chalk Buffalo D, right? We know what the field's doing. So you don't have to get too far off the board just to get different from the field, right? But yeah, I think Baker Mayfield will be pretty low owned. Rachaad White at 8K, I think is going to be low owned as well, but he's still the RB1. He's still running a lot of routes, and he's game flow independent, right? It doesn't matter if they're playing from ahead or from behind. Rachaad White's out there. He played 55 of the 73 snaps, ran 39 routes. Backup running back Keyshawn Vaughn, only 18 snaps, 9 routes. So I think Rachaad White's firmly in play. Again, all these Buccaneers guys, all the main guys, I think are going to be lower owned than they should be. Let's see. What else? Kicker is fine. As far as the slot wide receiver for the Bucs, Trey Palmer played 47 of the 73 snaps, ran 36 routes. I think he's an interesting value play, 4.2. Only 2 targets last week, but the game before that, he had 7 targets. Buccaneers D at 3.6. I mean, hey, I will say this. Josh Allen is very turnover prone. He is. So no one's going to click the Bucs D tomorrow. I think if I'm going to play defense in the slate, I would rather play the Bucs D than the Bills D. Because the Bucs D, no one's going to click them. And the Bills D, we know the casual players are going to be very heavy on the Bills D, right? I really like Cade Otton for value. $3,000. I think he's a very safe play. If you look at his stats last week, 70 of the 73 snaps, ran 44 routes. He's getting a fair amount of targets, and it's really cheap. I'm very high on Cade Otton. And there's another tight end on the opposite side who I'm really high on too. So this is kind of setting up for a tight end slate. As far as everyone else goes here for the Bucs, you do have Chase Edmonds is activated, so it'll be interesting to see, does he work ahead of Keyshawn Vaughn, who was the RB2 last week? We'll see. Either way, again, those guys are kind of just tournament plays for me, the backup backs for Tampa Bay. The other receivers, Raheem Jarrett played 21 snaps, ran 10 routes. And you had Devin Tompkins played 19 snaps, ran 13 routes. Tompkins is 1.6. Jarrett is $200. Again, those guys are just dart throws in tournaments. The backup tight ends, same thing. Payne Durham, 15 snaps, 8 routes. Cole Keefe, 12 snaps, 4 routes. Like I said, those guys are hard for me to feel good about. They're just kind of dart throws. When you have a guy like Cade Otton, who I think is just a really, really good value play just for a little bit more, like I'm just going to try to get up to him. All right, so let's talk about Buffalo. Buffalo, pretty easy to talk about. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, we know are going to be massive chalk. Allen, both these guys have a massive ceiling. Allen is a pretty high floor, too. He hasn't been as active on the ground, but we know Josh Allen can go give you 40, 50 yards on the ground. So don't think we had to spend a ton of time with Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs, right? You guys know these guys are great plays. They're going to be extremely popular, but it's for good reason. They're both two of the best plays in the slate. So yeah, I don't think we had to spend a ton of time there. Now, James Cook at 8.6, right? It's basically splitting snaps right now with Latavius Murray. Last week, James Cook, 37 snaps, 21 routes. Latavius Murray, 32 snaps, 20 routes. James Cook did out-touch Latavius Murray, though, by a fair amount. At this price point, again, I think he's a little overpriced. So don't love him. And I do think, again, he'll probably be over-owned because the more casual player is going to go heavy on the Bills. They're going to go jam, 5-1 Bills. So I don't love James Cook on this slate. Gabe Davis at 6.8K is always kind of that boom or bust type option, but he's on the field basically the entire game. That is the positive with Gabe Davis. So he's always one that I never know what to do with. He played 68 of the 71 snaps and 47 routes. He does have this type of upside, right? 20 plus fantasy point upside. He also has this type of floor. So I would rather play Gabe Davis than James Cook. I like the ceiling way more on Gabe Davis. So in tournaments, give me Gabe Davis over James Cook for $2,000 less all day. What else? Kickers are both fine. Bass a little more expensive. I'm very high in Dalton Kincaid. I think he's right there as one of the best plays in the slate. No Dawson Knox, no Quentin Morris. Probably going to have to call up a tight end from the practice squad. So I really like Dalton Kincaid. I think he's going to play majority of the game. And this is a too cheap a price point for him without Dawson Knox. I'm very, very high in Dalton Kincaid. Latavius Murray is 4.8. I think he's a reasonable play. 2 weeks ago, he had 12 carries there against the Giants. He had 6 touches last week. He basically split snaps with James Cook. So I think he's viable on the slate. The Bills D, totally fine. Like I said, they're cheap, playing at home, they're big favorites. The only thing I will say is they're going to be over-owned because we know how the field builds lineups when you have one team that's a big favorite. We know, right? We've seen this all year. We have a massive sample size of how the field likes playing these slates. So I think the Bills D is a good play on paper, but they're going to be over-owned. So me personally, I'm just not going to play them in tournaments. That's not how I play my GP. That's not how I play GPPs. Now, can you still build good lineups with the Bills D? Of course. You can still build plus EV lineups. You can still get unique, but you're going to have to leave salary on the table because you're not going to be different by onslaughting the Bills. That's what the field is doing. I can tell you that. Ownership's not out. I can tell you the field is going to be heavy on the Bills' onslaught tomorrow. Now, I will say these secondary receivers are interesting to me in tournaments because without Knox and without Quentin Morris, I think they're going to run a bit more through wide receiver sets. And we kind of saw this 2 weeks ago, right, when Kincaid missed, right, and Knox was really the main guy. Knox played a majority of the game, but you did see an increase in snaps for the other receivers. Shakir played 24 snaps. Sherfield played 22 snaps. You saw Hardy play 10 snaps on 10 routes. So they did get a slight bump. I think these guys do benefit a bit with Knox out. I think the playing time goes up a little bit. So Shakir 3.2, Hardy 1K, Sherfield at $400 are all viable options for me. And then we'll see which tight end they call up from the practice squad, whoever that is. If they add them to the player pool, sure, you can take a shot on them in tournaments. But guys, so that's going to wrap up the video. Hopefully that helped. Hopefully the what we talked about at the beginning of the video makes sense too, of studying what the best players in the world are doing every night, and then that will improve your game. Okay? I'm not making this stuff up. It's backed up by the data. You can go see what the best players in the world are doing every night. And like I said, in these videos, I'm trying to make you guys better DFS players. I'm not just giving you picks, give you better DFS players. And we really focus on building game theory and plus EV lineups on Patreon. I talk about that heavily in my videos and in the stream. So if you guys are interested in that, again, link is down below. Thanks again for watching. Good luck tomorrow, and we'll see you in the next video.